Hey guys, Steve Holland here. Just got done wrapping up deer season and I'm starting to go into my postseason gear maintenance, gear cleaning, and with that comes gun cleaning. My personal gun cleaning technique is lacking, I'll admit it, but I think it's the way that I was brought up in the Marine Corps. Lot of myths circling around that time when I was first starting up, and I think that those habits just continued. Some of the myths that started back then are kind of cold bore shots. Those evolved into clean bore shots, and then the clean bore shot evolved into carbon cleaning versus stripping copper. What's really going to affect your rounds? But when that kind of started, I think people didn't fully understand the difference between, well, am I stripping copper or am I just pulling carbon, and which one affects my shot? So I'm just going to continue with what I'm doing and not do anything. And so we kind of just focused more on our external cleaning. Is my gun clean to enough to put in the armory? Is my chamber clean? Is there any sticks and stuff in there from stocking? And I think that's kind of where we left it. What we did know back then is that we had inconsistent muzzle velocities, inconsistent shot groupings, but what we didn't know is it due to my cleaning, or is it simply due to my barrel, or is it due to my ammo selection? Because at the time, military ammo selection is lacking. My current process is kind of just using a bore snake. When I look down my barrel and I see carbon buildup or dirt, stuff like that, I'll dip the tip of my bore snake in some solvent and I'll run it through 3 times and I'll look back through the barrel and it'll look clean. And that's the way it stays until the next time I notice that it's dirty. What the Marine Corps taught me back in sniper school was run 3 wet patches through, run 3 dry patches through. And if that's dirty, run 3 wet patches, 3 dry patches. You just keep doing that until you were satisfied with your cleaning routine. And so the important part back then was that you had a consistent process and that you were actually doing it. And so that's what I was taught in school. And then after I graduated, I just went away from it. And, I shot out barrels through my 308 and I never cleaned them. Like I said, I would just run a bore snake through it and that was it. And everything was fine, or so I thought at the time. Rethinking barrel cleaning. Now that we have better ammo, precision match barrels that provide better accuracy, we have better chronographs, we have easily accessible bore scopes, stuff like that. We're starting to learn a lot about the actual internal effects of cleaning on our barrel and stuff like that, which is good. After, guys shooting matches, now they're starting to realize, like, hey, if I can hold a half MOA, a quarter MOA, some guys, and I go past that 200 to 500 round count, I'm starting to see my group opening up. Whereas, that 1.5-inch group or that 1-inch group that we were holding with our military rifles, we wouldn't notice that detailed of a group shift. And so we would never place the two together and be like, oh, I need to clean to maintain that accurate barrel. I recently read a really good article by Applied Ballistics that they posted to their Instagram or Facebook or whatever it was. And it kind of went into, they're lucky enough to have, big studies, lot selections of barrels and this and that, and that they compiled a bunch of information and wrote it up really nice. And I read it and I was like, you know what, I need to, with this new evidence, I hope you're doing this. I do this. When I hear something new in the precision rifle community, I don't take it as doctrine. I like to, hey, that's a cool concept. Can I replicate these results in my own capacity at the range and stuff like that? So, what I'm going to do here today is kind of go over the things that they said, go over some things that my peers are doing, and then I'm going to implement a process, and then on a later date, I'm going to refoul my barrel and see any accuracy changes. So, applied ballistics, what did they see? They started noticing fouling, firecracking, and erosion is happening at the very, from the chamber to the first like 4 inches of the barrel. They're finding that that's where the most of that is happening. And if you think about where the hottest pressures, where the craziness of when the round goes off, it's going to be in that first section of the barrel. So that kind of makes sense to me. The heat and pressure are concentrated in those inches of the chamber, and then they kind of start slowing down as the barrel passes through. So what they were saying is the fire forming and stuff like that happens in that first 4 to 6 inches of the barrel. And then once you start getting fire cracking, you start getting more friction in your barrel, more friction against the bullet as it's passing through that fire cracking. And then that compounds with more pressure, more heat, higher muzzle velocities. And so it just increases the problem, resulting in like that throat erosion and real inconsistent muzzle velocities, growing muzzle velocities as you compound the problem. So a lot of guys are seeing problems in their shots and muzzle velocities, blah, 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 and it could be due to this. So when I read that, I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. I need to start looking into this. So what they also said is for guys using 223 to 308, small caliber, slow calibers, chemical solvents are more than likely going to be sufficient because you're not reaching the temps that they found were causing more fire cracking and stuff like that. So just simply stripping out the carbon ring that's forming, the carbon buildup that's happening on the lands and grooves was easily attainable with those carbon solvents. When you started getting into the larger calibers, faster calibers, kind of like in the 3,000 feet per second and more, the fire cracking was more pronounced. And that makes sense, right? More velocities means more chamber pressure, which means more powder burn. So that it makes sense. The 2 and 2 they jive. Those calibers, those higher pressures, that much more fire cracking, they discovered that they needed something more other than a chemical solvent. And so that's when they started doing abrasive cleaning. They started applying an abrasive compound to that brush and running it multiple times, like 60 times back and forth through that first 4 to 6 inches. And then they would run an oil patch through, then they would run a dry patch through, and they'd see, hey, am I still getting product off? More fouling compound, and they didn't see a degradation in the barrel due to the fouling compound, but what they did notice was a polishing of that fire cracking and that carbon buildup and stuff like that. So just positive results, no real negative results. That kind of guys, when they hear like abrasive compound, they kind of get scared, like, am I going to be scraping my barrel away? No, they didn't see any of that. They just saw the polishing of the fire cracking, which kind of stabilized those muzzle velocities and make a more consistent shot group. After cleaning, though, they did notice some slower muzzle velocities in their barrels. So And that was due to, like we talked about earlier, the less friction in the barrel. So a slight drop, but it was more consistent after removing all that fouling and stuff like that. So now I'm going to demonstrate my current process. And to do that, I need bore snake and a solvent. So I use 100% ram's piss that I have collected. I'm just kidding. When I went to sniper school, they had a 55-gallon drum of Impro 7, and they said, hey, fill enough to clean your gun for the rest of the course. And so I filled up a Gatorade bottle that I had on hand, and you can see by how much I've used since 2015, I haven't used very much. So that's how much I clean my gun. But basically what I will do is remove my muzzle brake. I like to catch anything that comes out of the barrel. I retain my patches, stuff like that. Some guys have really nice solvent traps and stuff like that, but I don't need all that. I can't afford all that. So I simply will tape a sandwich bag on the tip of my barrel. Rifle clear, safe, no obstructions. And so this is just your simple bore snake. It's just a piece of fabric. Some of them have a wire brush integrated into it, which this one does. And so I'll take the first couple inches and I'll dip it in a solvent just to get it wet. Drip out the excess. And like I said before, I'll just run it through a couple times until I see that it's clean. I have not cleaned this barrel in forever, and so it's pretty fouled. It's probably got 700-800 rounds through it, a mixture of match rounds and all copper rounds. I live in California. California hunting laws require you to use 100% copper rounds. And so what that does is I think it enhances the copper fouling, because on these copper rounds, they have kind of the grooves in them, if you've ever looked at all copper rounds. And that's because as that copper round is expanding through your chamber and melting away, it fills in those little rings so that it doesn't completely deform the projectile as it's going through its external ballistics process. So they put all those little grooves and gaps in there to fill in with the copper that's melting away. And in that process, it's gotta be leaving more copper in your barrel. So just a theory of mine, but I've read that using 100% copper rounds fouls your barrel, or not fouls, but you get more of a buildup of copper in there rather than a thinly jacketed match round. All right, so Visually, with one pass of the bore snake, I am seeing like a mirrored finish in my lands and grooves. So normally, that is where I would stop. What I want to do now is kind of implement or perform applied ballistics recommended cleaning, which is run a wet patch and then 30 passes of a brush with a copper solvent on there. And like my friend Bumpus says, that's 2 counts. So for all you guys not 2 counting, you're doing it wrong. I'm going to do 30 passes with a brush, and then I'm going to run a dry patch down it. And if I remove that dry patch is dirty, then I'm going to repeat the process until I get a somewhat of a clean patch. And so depending on how dirty the patches are when I line them up here, is we're going to see just how effective just running a bore snake through the barrel, and then we're going to see just how ineffective it removes the copper and stuff like that. And so I don't have any fancy tools. I'm just going to be using a regular kind of cleaning rod with just some 6.5 caliber nylon brushes and some all caliber patches. So it's the first time I'm doing this. I've also purchased Vortec copper solvent. So this is recommended to me. I've never used it before, so we're both gonna kind of see the results together. See, never used it. All right, so I'm going to forego the wet patch because I think the bore snake took care of that. So I'm going to get out my nylon brush and hook it up. Just break it first try. All right. Get my nylon brush nice and wet. "30 passes. 1. All right, so that's 30. I need to grab a patch guide. Which I don't have in there. We'll do it the old school way. See if this works. As I was going through those 30 strokes, I did notice that it was getting easier and easier to go through. All right, you can see not too dirty. I think that those patches are too small, so let me get something bigger. Applied ballistics, they say you want a real tight fitting patch in there. I didn't get much resistance on that, so I'm going to try one of these bigger ones. Alright guys, I had to swap out to a new cleaning rod. Stronger steel. The other one bent on me as soon as I tried to put a patch through, so cheap. Alright, let's see what we got from this patch. This is the all caliber patch. It's a little bit thicker. I think we'll have better results with it. So, not too dirty. I don't know if that's, it's not because it's a clean barrel, that's for sure. Because this one, like I said, I've never cleaned it. So I'm thinking I'm gonna run more solvent through it, give it more patches until I start seeing some results. All right. $30. Dude, what is happening? Really love to cross thread this right in front of everyone. All right, a little dirtier, a little bit of bluish tint to it, and so from what I heard, that means the copper solvent is working. Good. little lighter in color, but still some chunks of copper, if you see that. So doing this job, getting better, and do it another time and then see. First time using a nylon brush. So if you guys want to comment on what your thoughts are on nylon, is it sufficient enough? I have a really nice Dewey rod, but it's 308. Probably looks familiar to what you've seen before. Fell off a truck. All right. Good solid seal on that one. No chunks. Compare it to the first one. How dark, how light it is. I think I'm going to do it one more time and then I'll call it. You know, when you use solvents, when you're trying to get carbon out, anytime you get something wet down that barrel, it's just gonna look dirty. So I don't know if we're just chasing the rabbit, you know, or if it's actually stripping. You know what? I have a brass brush here. Let me give it a couple passes with that and see if it comes out dirtier than that last one. Feels like a lot more resistance than the nylon. Hopefully that'll push more of that copper out. All right. just the tip dirty. The back half of the patch is clean. I don't know, kind of same results. So I've done multiple passes. I've got 5 patches here. Seems to have done its job. And so now what they recommend is a wet patch. I mean, that's pretty clear of any sign of carbon. I'm gonna do one more just to guarantee I got all that copper solvent out of there. It's my first time using it, so I don't know. Oh yeah. I'm gonna call that good. That's pretty impressive. That's the cleanest I've ever had my barrel. I've never had like a complete clean patch come out. So on this Vortec ink, like that copper remover, I'm pretty sold on that. Thanks, John, for recommending that. Ram's Piss, solid choice. I'm gonna run just some regular gun oil, just some Remington oil through it, just to keep it nice and lubed in there. If those solvents and stuff stripped all the oils, I don't want it to kind of rust out or anything like that when it's sitting in my safe, stuff like that. My GoPro just died. Trying to be like Phil, multiple cameras, trying to get the shot, you know. See what I'm saying? Like any kind of oil on your patch. Like this one, no oil, came out really clean. You put a little bit of oil on it and it looks like your thing's dirty. So if you can chase to get a clean patch forever and never make it there. For my bolt, I would just do a superficial cleaning, make sure the plunger and the extractor are good. Chamber brush for the chamber. I like what you guys did. Throw it on a drill and make sure that it really gets in there good. So I'll do that afterwards. I know I'm running long. But as far as comparing results as to my prior cleaning procedure, so this made it look clean. Just visually looking down the barrel, I could see some shine in there, stuff like that, no debris, stuff like that. But As we can see here, it is still pretty dirty after we ran the bore snake. So maybe for a superficial cleaning, in between those 200, 300 rounds, if you had some debris in there, it'd be fine. But if you're really trying to get it clean, we can see not sufficient enough. And so where to go from here? So to dismiss any kind of rumors or myths that you've heard, to assess a deviation in your group after cleaning. If you remove copper, you're not changing the profile of that barrel so much to where it's going to affect your shot pattern. Anytime copper goes down your barrel, it's going to start filling in voids and spaces or coating over bumps in your lands and grooves, stuff like that. Any kind of machining imperfections, going to fill in that stuff. So over time, you can start forming copper bumps. It can change the profile of your barrel, which isn't necessarily bad. It helps seal it helps to seal around the bullet, providing no escaping gases around your bullet as it's going through the chamber. But over time, it does kind of fill in all that stuff. And so in between a new barrel and a fouled barrel is where you'll see your inconsistencies. And so where we used to say, hey, cold bore shot, that first round is gonna be somewhere weird. Well, we've dismissed that. There's nothing in your barrel that should change every day to make a cold bore shot. We've now said that is cold shooter more. You haven't shot all day. That first round, you got to kind of lock it in and get in there, right? Where we do notice a definite change of pattern is after you've stripped copper. You've changed the profile of your barrel. And so that's going to deviate your impacts on target. Unless every time you strip copper after you shoot and stuff, and that's your norm, which I don't know too many people that do that. I have heard of some bench rest F-class guys stripping copper after every couple rounds, which is crazy to me. But right now, what I would do is I know I stripped the copper. I know I changed the profile of my barrel. So now my next step is going to the range and refouling my barrel, refilling in all those imperfections, those machining marks, those speed bumps, stuff like that in my barrel, until I start seeing my group come back to my zero and my muzzle velocities being more consistent on my chrono. And that's when I know my barrel's fouled. Some guys say 20 rounds, some guys say 40 rounds. Personally, I don't have 40 rounds to go out and file my barrel every time. Like, that's, in California, you'd be a millionaire with that much money. So, but this is my first time stripping copper, so I'm going to figure it out and maybe post results on a further on Instagram post or something like that. Thank you for sitting through and seeing this process. I'm looking forward to seeing the results and implementing this new process after every 200 to 500 rounds. We'll see when I need it. All right, thanks for sticking around, guys. See you later.